Hey guys, Chris from CR2 here, and I've got.
Ruben from CR2.
All right, we're here to talk to you guys about laser rangefinder devices. We've got a bunch of them here. We want to talk about some of the pros and cons, and we got a little question in A because we want to dispel some of the rumors we've seen, and then also some of the trends we've seen in this market. Because hey guys, we have had a ton of opportunity to use all kinds of different devices, both in our service and then also after in the commercial market. Because one of the fortunate things that we've got to do is work with a lot of industry partners in some of the development of some of the devices that you see here in front of you. Some of these are commercial devices. Some of these, like you see here with this Storm, are not commercially available devices. And so we got some insight on some of the different products that are available and are not available. And then we also have a really cool new device that we're going to do an unboxing on. This one literally has not been opened yet, and so we'll open that up here in just a second and let you check that out. Every little micro adjustment basically looks like it's moving a huge amount.
This is your radio check.
So let's go ahead and do the unboxing first, and then we'll get into the question and answer session.
Rock and roll.
All right, so first thing first, we have the brand new Mars MC. All right, this is the Mars MC, and inside the box here just comes with your standard stuff. Batteries, those are your 3-volt lithiums, manuals, quick starter manual, your remote. Those will come with 12-inch or 20-inch remotes, and then your Mars device. Same form factor as the previous Mars devices. Guys, this is basically the exact same Mars devices we had before. It's still just under 8 ounces at 7.8, I believe, ounces. It's about the size of a pack of cigarettes, or I don't know.
That's literally the size of a pack of Camels.
Yeah, about a pack of Camels here, okay? So super small device, super lightweight. If you had to mount this to a rifle, compared to some of these other devices, this is really the form factor you want. I think the only thing else out on the market that's going to come close to this size is like the MRF from Wilcox, and if any of you guys know anything about those, they're almost impossible to find. So this is a really cool form factor. We've got to spend a lot of time with all the different Mars devices, and we actually spent some time with this device over the last year before it was even released. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
How far did we take this out? 1750?
No, it was 1786.
1786, yeah. That was on the back of a speed limit sign, right?
Mm-hmm. On the highway.
On the highway, yeah. We actually pulled over on the side of the highway. We took a bunch of these different devices out, and we were ranging speed limit signs. We wanted to do the back of them because obviously the front is highly reflective. The back is just the back of the sign. It's that galvanized material.
Pure metal.
Pure metal. And that was like 90-degree days here in the summer of Georgia. As you guys know, it gets 90 degrees here easily. High mirage, so crappy atmospheric conditions. And we wanted to see what these things could do. As a lot of you guys know, this is a 905 laser, so we'll get into what that means. You might think that it doesn't perform as well, but we were getting some spectacular performance out of this device here.
Absolutely. I can honestly say, even through the spot and scopes we had them attached to, we used Mark IVs, we used the Bushnells, super milky, and I was highly skeptical, like whether or not we're going to be able to reach, as far as we did repeatedly. So I was quite shocked with, the performance of it. So
yeah, these are going to come equipped with Applied Ballistics. You can load profiles on here from the Applied Ballistics Connect app, or you can load that from your your Kestrel 5700s with the AV Elite on there or whatever. It does have a weather sensor on there, although you can leave it connected to the Kestrel if that's what you wanted to do. It has the scan feature, which is a really nice feature, especially if you needed to check to make sure this thing, if you were skeptical if it was still zeroed, you can scan across something that maybe a known point and check to see, when it crossed there, if it was still lined up with your reticle.
that's my favorite feature, scan.
Yeah, we use these things, or we zero these things using parallel zero. So just finding out where your laser, or where your reticle is, finding out what the offset would be, and then running those parallels with each other. So that way, you know, where your reticle is and where your laser is will remain parallel to infinity, which is a really, really nice way to do things. So really excited about this device. Nice thing about this is it is still a V-cell style of laser, but because it is a 905, it's a little cheaper. So they're coming in right at $6,800 street price, which is saving you about a third of the price of the standard full up Mars. So good amount of savings there.
So the only difference is the wavelength.
Yep, just the wavelength. Yep, that's the only difference there.
Something else I want to add to that is this connector. A lot of times, like, guys fail, especially in the engineering aspect of how do you connect a remote to the device. This has the nice little slide lock on it, and then, I mean, it's super smooth to it. And we talked about the form factor. It absolutely has the form factor of something you would run and gun with, like ruck with, throw it in and out of your bag. Yeah, it just slides right on. I absolutely love this connector. I mean, it's rock solid. It's on there, so you don't have, you know, it's not going to break. There's nothing protruding off. So
yeah, I remember the first time I went to take that thing off, I couldn't get it off because I wasn't sure how it worked. It's actually got a little on the front. You kind of press it in a little bit, and then it detaches.
See, it is right here.
Yeah,
bam, right here. This silver part. See, like, that's a good thing, you know. So you just won't rip off. Yeah, and the connectors, they just touch, so they don't have to actually have a male female where they go in, you know. So you have the potential to break, and that's definitely something in the field you want to avoid. But that's, man, I love that, dude. Look at that, amazing.
And just like most of your weapon-mounted laser rangefinders, your Viz laser and your laser rangefinder are mounted on the same bench, which means that when you adjust your Viz laser, you are adjusting your laser rangefinder. So you can align this at daytime, and your laser rangefinder will be aligned. So super cool there. So let's talk about application real quick. How do you like to use your laser rangefinder to get the most out of its performance when ranging targets at distance?
I mean, I'm going to go to the base of the target.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, the Earth is not going to move right there at that moment in time. So it's right there. I mean, you literally just go down the T-post, boop, hit it, got your range, you know, plus or minus 1 or 2 yards. You know, I've also done, you know, off to the left, off to the right, you know, things that are close to it. That works fairly well too. You know, that's probably more 3 to 5 yards, you know, difference. Just whatever's there in that amount of time, and you know how much time I have to accomplish my objective.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point, and I like to have that pointed out to people, because a lot of times guys want to just specifically range their target. Well, especially in a lot of these competitions, our targets can be on 4, 5, and 6 feet tall pickets. Okay.
Like,
yeah. And so when we talk about that beam divergence earlier, you know, how much of the target is your beam actually picking up, and how much of it is passing the target? You know, we saw it this weekend when we were out in Wyoming shooting a competition where one of those targets was skylined and there was defilade behind the target. So if you missed the target, you didn't see where your bullet went.
nothing.
Well, prime example with laser rangefinders are, if you didn't hit enough of that target for your laser rangefinder to return a reading, you would be sending that laser way past the target. So by casting that beam at where the picket touches the earth, you can actually work that laws of averages and actually get a reading, because even though you might be picking up a little bit of the ground in front of it and a little bit of the ground behind it, you're actually picking up the area where the target is, rather than the area behind the target.
Exactly. Which is where that scan feature comes in really well. I mean, you're able to scan across this. It was literally on a ridgeline. It was like huge hill, and then we had all these targets across. And it's, you know, if you missed your shot, you got no report. You got no dust, no impacts on anything. It was just trace disappeared. Okay, cool, that just happened. So in order to get an accurate reading, just scan along the ridgeline. You can be able to tell if it's at an angle or if it's just straight across. It'll give you that reading to at least get on target. We got a question about objective lenses.
Yeah, so objective lens size. That's actually really, really important. And this is actually why, for the longest time, your weapon-mounted laser rangefinders were so expensive, and people didn't understand that, because I heard the comment all the time, well, why can't I just take the laser rangefinding module out of my laser rangefinding binos and strap it to my rifle? Well, there's a lot of flaws with that concept. One, recoil. Okay, recoil. These things don't take recoil. All right, these are not subjected to recoil, so they're not built to stay in recoil. If you took the laser rangefinder module out of here, just slapped it to a rifle, you're going to have issues that way. Okay. Second of all, the objective lens. Who's going to be happy about these objective lenses being strapped to the rifle compared to these objective lenses? All right. Obviously, much smaller. Even when you compare it to the Vortex, much smaller laser objective lenses than what you have on these binoculars. Okay. But that being said, the bigger the objective lens, the easier it is for it to return a reading, okay? And that is why you're typically going to have a much cheaper range-finding binocular than you're ever going to have a weapon-mounted or rifle-mounted laser rangefinder, because you can get a good reading with these and much easier than you can with this. And so in order for this to perform like this, you're going to have to spend a lot more money to get the technology. All right, so let's talk about the wavelength, because when we start talking about laser rangefinders, that's one of the first things that people want to kind of misunderstand, or they want to conflate some pieces of information that really don't have anything to do with each other.
What's the power of the laser?
What's the power of the laser? Is it a 1550 or a 905? And what they're actually referring to is the wavelength of the laser, and that's a 1550 nanometer or a 905 nanometer. And it's actually not the power, it's just the part of the light spectrum that laser operates on.
Let's see what that looks like.
So, guys, what you need to understand is that you can have a certain amount of power output on a laser at any part along the wavelength of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, or the frequency along the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's a common misconception. Now, military laser rangefinders are typically higher power, and they are typically 1550 nanometers, but those two things are not mutually exclusive. And that's something people have a hard time understanding. When you're talking about a military or law enforcement laser rangefinder, they are not held by the same laws and regulations as what is available to a civilian. Now, we're not here to argue about whether or not that's the way the law should be written, okay? But you have to understand that that is the way it is. And it has nothing to do with the power, quality, or how well a laser rangefinder can actually range. It has to do with what spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum the laser rangefinder operates in, and then separately how much power it has. Okay, so I can make a 905 operate with a ton of power, but then it will be illegal to own. I can make a 1550 not operate with as much power and make it legal to own. Those things are not mutually exclusive, and we see that all the time. The original Mars was a 1550 nanometer laser. It was legal to own because it had a power rating that allowed it to be legal. Okay? This is a 1550 nanometer laser that is not typically legal to own by most military or most non-military and legal or law enforcement entities. Okay? So the reason being is because this puts out a super high wattage of power. So those two things are not mutually exclusive, and that's something that people commonly misunderstand.
All the time.
Yeah, let's dig into power for a minute there.
Perfect.
So there's actually an equation to determine power output. It's your standard wattage output, and all of these put out different amounts. Obviously, there's a legal requirement for the amount of power they can put out based off of to make it eye safe and things like that. So obviously your military style laser rangefinders have much higher. This thing will put out over a watt of power. Okay, so this is well above what is civilian classification of laser rangefinder, and that's why this laser rangefinder can actually be used at 10,000 meters for ranging stuff. This actually isn't just meant to be mounted on a rifle. This can be mounted on a crew serve weapon. It can be mounted on a Mark 19. It can be mounted on a Crow's system on top of a truck, and or even I think strikers, all that kind of stuff like that. It can be used to signal aircraft onto targets that way too. So that's why. But this device, if it were even available on the civilian market, would be multiple tens of thousands of dollars.
Hot rod.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay. The devices like this are going to be well under a watt of power. Now, one thing that I would like to talk about, and we don't actually have represented here, is like the SIGs. The SIG 10Ks are a prime example of a device that is civilian legal, but they actually get around the legal requirements in a pretty interesting way. And what they've actually done in order to make their laser rangefinder work really well, and it actually kind of mimics a higher power laser rangefinder, is they increase the pulse rate. All right, so when you talk about wattage, it's measured in like intensity and time or something along those lines. Well, what they've done is they increased the pulse rate. So they've taken it to the max power, but what they did was they made it pulse really fast.
Shorten the amount of time the laser is emitting.
And so by bursting out a lot of pulses really rapidly, they're able to essentially mimic what a higher power laser could do, setting out lower pulses at a higher intensity. And that's really unique that they did that. I think some of the other laser rangefinder companies are starting to catch on, but we saw that in our laser rangefinding testing done, that the laser rangefinders from SIG, the higher end laser rangefinders from SIG, outperformed everything else.
I honestly didn't realize that until we really got into the weeds about it, and just looking at the speeds as we're scanning, which we got a question about the continuous option. I was picking up stuff, boom, and I was able to distinguish my target, very rapidly. That's why I love my SIGs, and now I have like the answer as to why it does what it does. It's very interesting. So why does the military or law enforcement agencies prefer the 1550 over the other?
Well, it's very simple, okay? And a lot of people think it's because the 1550 is an eye-safe laser, and it's actually really doesn't have anything to do with that either.
No.
It actually has to do with the fact that the 1550 nanometer laser cannot be seen by night vision.
Boom, boom! Cannot be seen by night vision.
All right, guys, that's simply it. We don't want our near-peer adversaries to be able to see our lasers at night. Okay? Simple, cut and dry. That's why we use a 1550 nanometer laser. There is other benefits, and we can talk about what those other benefits are when we talk about laser propagation here in a minute, but that is the simple reason for why we use a 1550 versus a 905. If you are on the battlefield shining 905 lasers across, you are going to give away your position.
It's literally going to look like Star Wars.
Absolutely.
All right, so what are the several reasons to choose a specific wavelength?
Okay, so I relate the choice of wavelength to something similar to why we choose what frequencies our phones work on, or what frequency we would use in radio transmission. So you have high frequency and low frequencies. Your low frequency being your 905s, your high in 905s like this or this, and then your high frequencies being your 1550 like this. So essentially, the reason why 1550s are preferred, especially in like the military or maybe higher end laser rangefinders, is because you can actually get through some of the atmospheric conditions easier with a 1550. So you got to think of, I like to think of atmospheric conditions like barriers. Yeah. Things I need to cut through or I need to get around.
Like screens.
Screens, if you will. Okay? the longer my wave is, the harder it is going to be to get around those atmospheric screens. Okay.
Less condensed.
Yes. Now, the tighter my wavelengths are, the more of them I have to get around those atmospheric conditions. And that's just in layman's terms. It's not anything technical, okay? But that's the way I like to envision it.
I like to think about it as a concentrated beam versus a, normal, it just is able to penetrate because you just have this cruising right on through.
Yeah. Now, there's more to it than that. Power does come into effect. The amount of power you're transmitting will affect how well that wavelength can actually cut through some atmospheric conditions. The quality of the sensor is going to have an effect on the ability to read that transmission when it comes back.
Yeah.
And then the quality of the laser itself. Okay?
True.
So that's one of the next things I want to talk about. Now, we're not going to go through the list of all the different types of lasers, but there is a definite difference in the actual quality of laser itself. So you have things like a V-cell laser and erbium lasers, all right? And I like to equate these to your old halogen lights versus an LED light, or an incandescent light versus an LED light. So if I took an incandescent light and I cast a cone of light against the wall, I would have a lot fuzzier, a lot less defined beam of light, right? You've all done that with a flashlight when we were a kid, cast it against the wall, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then when we take that LED and we cast it against the wall, we get a much more defined beam of light.
Super crisp.
And that's kind of what we get with the V-cell laser. And that's why some of the devices like the Mars laser are much higher dollar devices, because they have much higher quality lasers in them than some of the other devices on the market.
Yep.
You're going to get a much higher quality beam cast from that device. Now, yes, I understand that the price of V-cell lasers is coming down, but that's only part of the equation, is the actual laser itself quality, and then the sensor quality.
Yeah, you'll have gives and takes. So you just got to do your research into what type of laser you have, what is it powered by, and then we'll talk about a few other things here to look at, far as making a good selection and choice for your specific application.
Right.
Which that leads us into beam divergence.
Beam divergence. So
what is it, and why is it important for these specific items?
Yeah. So beam divergence is, when we talked about that cone a second ago, the best way to and the easiest way to illustrate this is beam divergence is that cone of light that comes out of the laser. All right. Lights are cones. All right. There's no such thing as a light that's going to come out and remain the same size from the time it transmits from the device to the time it reaches its destination. All right, it's going to grow in size.
Everything's in angles.
Yep, everything's in angles. So we want to maintain a small beam divergence in order to maintain an actual concentration beam on our target, our intended target. The problem is that with a large beam divergence, we overlap not only the target itself, but unintended targets, or the things around the target area that we don't want to get a reading on. So when we have large beam divergences, we pick up things like the berms behind our targets, or even sometimes, things that are hundreds of meters or hundreds of yards behind, like the woods behind the firing area. Okay? And the sensors that are inside of these have to get that laser return and measure that in time to determine that distance to the target. So if it's picking up more of the woods behind the target than it is the target itself, it's going to return the woods versus the target. And that's where we get false readings.
Yeah, and they have the different selections between what?
First, last, best. Yeah, all those different things. Those are settings you can choose from, but ultimately your beam divergence is going to have a large play in that, because the fact of the matter is if your beam's so large that it's just not picking up enough of your intended target, there's nothing you can do about it. And that's what we see with some of the higher quality devices, is beam divergences in 1 milliradian or better. So this device here is sub 1 milliradian. This device here is sub 1 milliradian. I really don't know what these Leupold laser rangefinders are, and I don't think Vortex publishes theirs either. I haven't seen it
I haven't
published
seen
in a
any
while
kind of
either.
research on that at all, or anything produced. But think about it, like just like this picture here. You know, as you're getting out in distance, you got your cone. Well, these different types of lasers are going to have a different size, you know, out at distance. So think about, you know, at 1,500 yards, you're ranging something. Well, your beam is the size of a car. So you're hitting everything within, you know, the size of that automobile, or it could be the size of a stop sign. So that you're really going to get what you pay for. So digging in and doing the research and knowing the difference between X, Y, and Z, just like I said earlier, will help you make a better informed decision how to spend your hard-earned money.
Mm-hmm.
What are the differences in performance across the spectrum here?
Yeah, so you know, you know, companies will use marketing to sell their products. I'm not going to specifically name names, but what I will say is that that's why marketing teams exist. All right, I'm fall for it just as well as anybody else.
It's sexy.
You know,
I mean,
you go to the store and you buy a certain bottle of wine because you like the way it looks, long before you ever know how it tastes, right? So, yeah. So, it's the same thing for laser rangefinders, right? I'm going to buy the one that looks the coolest long before I ever know how well it performs. Hopefully, we can find something online, but, you know, how well can we trust that? So, a lot of these laser rangefinders will have a distance performance in the name, okay? Impact 4000, right? Impact 4000.
Yep.
Well, actually, these don't have it in the name, but you know we see that all the time. The Sig Kilo 10Ks.
Yep.
You know, it's a 10,000 kilometer, or you know, it's a 10,000 meter laser rangefinder. But we all know that you're not ranging anything at 10,000 meters with
No.
the Sig Kilo 10Ks.
Definitely a
All right?
capability I don't even need.
And we also know that this thing will never range anything at 4,000 outside of maybe the Empire State Building. So that's just something to know. It really comes down to what it is you're going to range with it. And guys, that's going to come down to what it is, what it's made out of, its reflectability. So, or reflectivity. I think one of the best companies out there is, one of the most honest companies out there actually is Envision. Which I think hurts them to some extent because they don't. They're still a small company, and so they don't want to have false advertisement, and therefore they will undersell their product in order to not be blamed for overselling their product. And they're going to actually state what this thing will do on a NATO standard target, which is how the military tests laser rangefinder performance. To you, that doesn't mean absolutely anything, but it makes it sound not very good. You know, this device performs much better than this device from all of our experience. But this device says it can range much farther than this device says it can range. Now, at this price tag of this, it better be able to perform better than this one.
Exactly.
You know, and that's probably what the majority of the people out there listening to this right now are thinking. This thing costs 2 to maybe almost 3 times as much as this, so it better perform. And I would agree with you. This thing is only $2,000, so I can buy 3 of them, outfit 3 of my rifles, and if it doesn't perform as well, then I'm not that upset about it. Now, that being said, I like to buy performance.
Yep.
All right? I want to buy the vehicle, the laser, the rifle, the cartridge,
Yep.
the whatever I'm going to buy that's going to actually give me the performance I need. I don't want to buy something that's going to underperform. Therefore, I'm going to buy the laser rangefinder that actually gets me to where I want to be.
Higher hit probability, right?
Yeah.
I look at it like this, like these guys have a specific standard that they have to meet and reach. We have specific metrics. Boom, right here. And it's all published, it's all out there. Great, that's awesome. I know what I'm buying here. You know, where are we at, you know, with the civilian, you know, off the shelf stuff, you know? I mean, this is still considered, you know, the civilian off the shelf, but I mean, you're paying that premium, but you get what you pay for. I mean, you want that higher performance. Got to take out that personal loan, you know.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully though, and one of the good things is as more companies come to the market, we'll see the prices on these devices drop. We
Yep.
are already seeing that.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's a positive thing. The prices are already coming down. There wasn't a device like this a year ago. If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Send us a DM. We will do our best to answer it. As always, we appreciate your support. If you don't already, hit the subscribe button. Follow us on all the social media.
Turn on notifications.
Turn on notifications, whatever it is. And we will see you next time.
See you in the range.